Hello, I'm Dr. Greg Winteregg, CEO of the Private Dentist Alliance. I want to talk to all of you students out there today who are wondering what your future is going to be like as a career in dentistry. As an assistant, as a hygienist, as a dentist, where is this profession going with the rapid increase of the DSO movement? I'm here to tell you that PDA is going to help you, and I want you to become a member today. It is free. Now, why should you become a member? You're going to get weekly video updates from me, and you're going to get regular updates of our newsletters from the Alliance on exactly what is happening and how we are going to help preserve and protect the private practice of dentistry. Now, to me, the most important advantage is you are going to get access to our job board. What is that? Our private practicing members all have access to our PDA job board, which means if they have an opening in their private practice of assistant, hygienist, doctor, front office staff, they're going to be able to post it. And you're going to be able to check up regularly. And as our membership grows, we're going to be covering larger and larger territories across the United States. If you are looking for a job in any position in the office of a private practice, you need to become a student member today. It is free. Go to www.privatedental.org and become a student member today. You're going to love your benefits. Do it now.
What is up, guys? It's your boy Matt Havis back out with Dental Student Vibes Podcast. Today we have part 2 of our very special interview with Mark Johnson. He is the founder of StudentLoansRx. He is back at it. He's giving all the super high yield information that you will need in order to be a successful investor while having student loans as a practice owner. So Mark dives into everything from real estate investments, what his opinions are on that. Should you get into it? Should you not? Check that out. He also tells you about the stock market, why he likes it versus things he doesn't like about it. So check it out. Let us know what you think. We always love your feedback. If you guys have anyone that you want us to talk to, let us know. Shoot us a DM on Instagram at dental.student.vibes. We love reading them, and we want to provide the top-notch quality information for you guys. So as always, let's stay safe. Let's vibe on.
Whether you want to call it an investment, asset, or a liability, is either buying a new house or renting from someplace that might be lower in monthly payments versus real estate. But I mean, who knows? So what is your opinion on renting versus buying while paying off student loans?
Okay, so the real estate market, I'm not an expert in real estate market, in residential real estate, but obviously there's different markets. So the coasts are very expensive. So if we're having this conversation, I've got clients in Seattle. It's a different conversation than clients in Des Moines, Iowa, right? So it just really depends on where you're going to be. I think it also depends on how quickly do you want to be a practice owner. So when you go into a bank to get a loan to buy a practice, what does the banker want to see? They want to see, number one, that the practice cash flows. Number two, do they feel you're going to be able to meet the production, right? So if Dr. Smith retires and you take over Dr. Smith's practice, are you going to be able to keep the numbers up or hopefully grow them? And then they're going to look at your personal finances. Okay, so if you got a $600 Audi payment and $400,000 in student loan debt and $3,500 mortgage, that's going to be less attractive to a banker than if you walk in and say, hey, I graduated 3 years ago. I've saved up $50,000. I don't have any consumer debt. I've got a $250, payment on my Toyota Corolla or whatever. If your desire is to be a practice owner, my counsel is to limit some of those larger consumer purchases until you get that practice loan. I also don't recommend refinancing your student loan debt oftentimes until you secure the practice loan.
Right.
Because the banker wants to see that the banker really doesn't care if you've got $400,000 or $500,000 in student loan debt. What they care about is what's your monthly payment. Because they're looking for cash flow. They want to make sure that if they loan you $1 million to buy a practice, that you're going to be able to make that payment.
Right. So, okay. So thank you for the segue, because that was the next portion of our conversation here that we really like to focus on. We're very supportive of getting into ownership early. So let's just like walk through an example here. So let's say a student graduates, they work as an associate for a year or two, like you said, get your production numbers, and then now they want to buy a practice. So how do you go about planning your student loans, coordinating that with your timeline for buying a practice within, let's just say, like the first 3 years out of school?
Sure. So obviously each situation's unique, but let's say, the average dental student graduates with about $300,000 in student loan debt. I think our average client's about $4 million. So let's just say you've got $400,000 in student loan debt. You didn't have any income that last year coming out of dental school. So we're likely going to recommend that you get on an income-driven repayment plan. Keep your payment low, actually be zero the first 12 months. Take some money and start setting it aside in an investment account. Okay, so build up your liquidity over that first 2 to 3 years. We might recommend putting, get a little money in a Roth IRA, because your income is gonna block you out of doing a direct contribution into an IRA at about $130,000 of income for a single person, and right at about $200,000 for a married couple. So you want to fund your Roth IRAs if you can. By the way, worst case scenario, you can pull money out of a Roth IRA. The principal can come out tax and penalty free. So if you got to dip into it, which I've had clients had to sell their Roth IRAs, because they needed to come up with a little more money for a building or, for down payment on the practice. So in those first 2 to 3 years, I would just say, get your skill set up, get your production numbers looking great, poke around and see where you want to settle down and buy a practice, start building relationships with, maybe some senior dentists in the community that you ultimately want to settle in. So I would just say, you're out of school, enjoy some of the fruits of your labor, keep your consumer spending, within reason. And, right now you guys have been super, super disciplined to get the graduation date and pass your boards, right? That next goal is, I want to be a practice owner maybe in 24 months or 30 months or something like that. And then lay out those items. What do I need to do to be a practice owner in 30 months? We work with, there's a number of companies out there, but we do a lot of joint marketing work with a company called ddsmatch.com. So they have, they're a practice broker, and they help also place associates, and I think they're in like 30 states around the country. So find a practice transition consultant. You can, if you visit me on LinkedIn, I probably am connected to 25 or 30 of them around the country. You want to find somebody, a practice broker, that say, hey, I'm looking to buy a practice in the Dallas, Fort Worth area, maybe in the next 30 months. Kind of keep me in mind. A lot of them, you can go online and build a profile and say, here's the areas that I'm looking for. Here's the areas that I'd like to, keep me in mind on when you've got something. The other thing I would just say is, you guys are super disciplined. I mean, it takes a lot to get through, dental school, obviously medical school. There's other disciplines that are really hard to get through. So recognize that you learning how to run a practice is going to be a walk in the park compared to getting through dental school. So, if somebody says, well, I'm thinking, 4 to 5 years, I'm like, no. You got to do it before then. You'll get 4 to 5 years. You're going to want to buy a house. You're going to want to start a family. You're going to get comfortable with the income that you're making. And, it's going to get more difficult as time goes on, I think. You probably can't get a practice, your first year out because you don't have anything to show the bank yet in terms of production numbers. But I'd say, 2 to 3 years should be, if you want to own a practice, that would be a good window to look at.
Thank you for supporting that, because that's really our message we try and share with everybody. So now one of the things that we talk about a lot is like, okay, so let's say our loans are at 7%, right? What if we're able to find some sort of investment that has a higher ROI than 7%? Like, let's say, like, what are your thoughts on, maybe purchasing real estate and you're returning like, I don't know, 10, 12% if you're lucky, and it's not your primary residence, it's just strictly a rental property. What are your thoughts on starting to like begin getting more fully leveraged through real estate than, the Roth IRA, for example?
So I'm going to take a pass on that one. Okay. I don't pass on too many, but here's what I'll say. Okay. I'm not an expert on commercial real estate. You can make good money in commercial real estate. I know many people have. I'm investing in the market. I think the guys that run, name your favorite company today, do a pretty good job of returning gains to shareholders, and all we have to do is mail in our money. So I think there's probably there might be more effort on your part in terms of commercial real estate. You got to be more involved in that aspect. I also know that leverage works both ways, right? So you can put money in so if you invest in a Roth IRA with me, the worst you're going to do is I'm going to lose all your money. Right. Okay. If you buy a commercial building and you put $50,000 down, and we're at a pretty frothy real estate environment right now, I think a lot of you can lose more than you put in. Mm-hmm. So that's the challenge with leverage, is you can lose more than what you invest. And I think starting out, you guys are going to have an opportunity. I know you're anxious to make a bunch of money, but you're going to have many years to do that. And I would caution you on getting over leveraged, too early. Right. If it's supporting a practice, okay, that's part of what you went to school for. But just to start buying up duplexes, in Boca Raton, I'm not sure that that might take a little bit of that might take some time away from what I think your core skill is which is in those first couple years is getting your hands working and fixing some teeth and generating some production numbers. The market historically, if you go back to 1926, the U.S. stock market has generated about a 10% rate of return pre-tax. And that's pretty good for not really having to be involved in an activity. You could do better than that in commercial real estate, but interest rates are super low right now, and so the real estate market has been pretty high. This whole work from home theme. Okay, there's going to be some people after COVID-19 that are definitely going back to work in an office environment, right? But there's a lot of people that aren't. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of companies that are just going to tell their employees, we've got the technology set up now. They find that actually people work more from home. Initially, they thought people weren't going to be as efficient from home. They're going to be watching Netflix and goofing off with the dog or whatever. But what they found out is that people are actually getting more work done from home because we're actually putting in more hours at home. And so what is that going to do to the commercial real estate market? Are there going to be a bunch of buildings that are not going to be, going to have vacancy because there's lots of people that are going to be working from home? So I'm not a commercial real estate expert, but, I'd be I'd be cautious about that. I'd really want to know the area that I'm in.
Right.
What is their outlook for filling up that building?
Right. Because yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff about they're saying, okay, perhaps we're at the point where all the properties are already priced in, and it's just kind of like, all right, now we're waiting for the next administration, and then we'll see how things turn out. Maybe turn around or just, of course, some sort of difference between the last 4 years and this next 4 years.
So there's a high correlation between interest rates and real estate performance and stock market performance and stuff like that. So I mean, we're at the lowest we've been in, I think, ever. Certainly
yeah.
in your guys' lifetime, this is the lowest interest rates have ever been. So asset prices are up. So the question is, if you buy a commercial building that you're planning on flipping at some point, or, if interest rates go from, the 10-year treasury is a little over 1%. And if that goes to something reasonable, like 3.5%, that's going to hit, financial assets, especially those that are more levered, like real estate could, take it on the chin a little bit. Again, I'm not an expert on it, but I'd be careful. I'd really want to understand the property I'm buying, and, is it, what's the likelihood that you're going to be able to get those tenants in and, increase, rates over time. And there you go. That's I said I was going to pass on that one. I didn't really pass on it, did I?
Yeah.
No, you definitely touched right on it. But my question is, so we talked about some ways that you can get involved in finance and some investments you can make. So we talked about Roth IRA, we talked about the market, a little bit on real estate. So are there any others that we can consider as a possibility to start putting some money away that might passively, because your whole idea of the market is you want to be a little bit more passive. So is there any other passive ideas that come to mind that somebody can think of as a possibility?
Well, what I mean by passive is I mean you as a dentist.
Right.
I'm not an advocate for what's called today, quote, passive investing. I think if I give somebody money to invest, I want to know what they're doing with it, and that they're not just throwing it into some index and, hoping it goes up because it went up last year or last week or whatever. At my company, we're active managers, and that doesn't mean that we don't use some indexes or some passive investments as part of an overall portfolio. But we like to buy individual stocks and actively manage mutual funds and the whole 9 yards. So I would say, one of the centerpieces of our financial plan is that you have a 3-month emergency savings fund. So some people prior to COVID-19 were like, why should I have 3 months of my income or my expenses in this debt account earning 2%? I said, well, I don't know. At some point, you're going to want that money. Well, COVID-19 comes along. Obviously, that's a 1 in 100-year thing, hopefully. And now all our dental professionals that got laid off and furloughed were pretty happy that they had a 3-month emergency savings fund. So you have different buckets of money that serve different purposes. So, Dave Ramsey, you might listen to him, but he recommends us, start out with, I think, $1,000 and then 6 months of emergency savings. Now, it doesn't have to be 6 months sitting at something earning 0 or 0.5%, but maybe you have 3% you have 3 months in your savings account at the bank. You're not getting much on that. And then maybe you have another 3 months at something that's getting 2 or 3%, not quite as liquid, but, still pretty liquid and safe. And so you have different buckets of money. So emergency savings, I think, is really important. Our goal is to get 3 months of emergency savings saved up in the first 18 months out of school. Okay, so if your monthly expenses are $5,000, then we want you to get $15,000 put away in over 18 months. Roth IRAs, that money grows tax-free forever. You're not going to beat that out. That's pretty good. And if you're halfway decent on your investment selection, over the next 40 years, I think you're going to be pretty happy that you've got some money early on in a Roth IRA. We do encourage people in that first year or so, if you're on an income-driven repayment plan and your payment is super, super low because your income was 0 the first year and 6 months of income the second year, that you take those 24 months and build up some liquidity. And we work with Fidelity Investments. All of our client accounts are held at Fidelity Investments. And there are some investments that are very conservative that you can put some money in to build some of that liquidity. And then you can use those monies to, down payment on a practice, make a big lump sum, towards your student loans 2 or 3 years down the road. So there's a number of things, but my encouragement to a young dental professional is, whatever you do, your priority should be to get yourself in a position to buy a practice if that's your goal. And all of the other investment things, I mean, you'll have Roth is great, emergency savings is great, but I wouldn't get too crazy with, alternative investments in those first couple 2 or 3 years out of school.
Baseball cards.
Yeah. So I shouldn't put all my money
Yeah.
in Bitcoin and Tesla right
now. That I don't think is going to work out for you. No.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see here now. The thing that most people, when they're getting out of school, what we've all just kind of given up instead of going on with our lives. Most of our friends have families, they have houses, they have cars. We've given it up so that we can go through dental school, right? That's how most students feel. And so most students, as you know, want to make that purchase, like the big purchase when they get out of school. So like you said, I love that you keep preaching that to, focus on purchasing the practice down the road and just make that your primary focus. So now, when does the student who just graduated buy the car? Like, okay, they get their 3 to 6 months of emergency funds, but when do you purchase the car?
Like, when would you buy a 70 Chevelle Super Sport?
When your practice is generating $1 million a year of revenue, and you've paid off your student loans, that's when I would buy it.
Okay.
So here's the thing: I'm the wrong guy to be asking questions about automobiles, because I find that they're a tool, okay,
Right.
and they get me to where I want to be, and I don't draw any personal what's the best word to say? I don't feel better about myself driving a nicer car or not. So I feel that when someone comes into me, so every once in a while as a wealth advisor, I don't just do student loans for dentists, right? I have other clients, but 90% of my business, my time is spent with dental professionals. But when someone else comes into my office, sometimes I'll get a referral 2 or 3 times a year that, a young couple or somebody, they're upside down financially and somebody refers them to me, and they come in and, maybe they got laid off, but they're having some financial troubles. First 2 things I look at is their cars, what's their car payments, and how much do they eat out. First 2 things.
Right.
They have to fill out a budget. I have to fill out a budget before they come in. The average American adult spends $400 a month on a car payment. Now, if you do that over 20 years, instead of investing it in a 7% return investment, that's $200,000. So you have to ask yourself. Now, I'm not saying, drive the car your parents bought you in high school. Okay, what I'm saying is, I'm not telling you not to drive it, because maybe it's still in great shape and gets you from point A to point B. You guys are going to have the income to buy everything you need, and a lot of what you want. You just have to pace yourselves. And I understand that there's this pent up demand to purchase, and you're looking at your friends, but your friends, okay, instead of going to dental school and maybe establishing, a career path that's going to generate millions of dollars over the next 30 to 40 years, if it's done right, okay, maybe they're going to, max out in their income in 5 years. And when you're driving whatever car you want, they're still driving the car that you see them driving today that's 15 years old, because, they went out and did that all on borrowed money. So I would just say, hey, keep your car payment, a couple $100 a month. If you can stretch it out, I mean, you can buy some nice luxury cars that have 100,000 miles on them. Nobody looks inside and sees how many miles are on that car. You pay half as much for it, So what do you want to be? Do you want to be driving around the nicest car that's, you got a $600, $700 payment, or do you want to be putting some of that money away towards buying a practice that's going to generate $1 million, of revenue a year for you forever if you do it right? So
Right.
I would just say hang on a little bit longer, and at your 5 years from now, at your high school reunion, whatever that is, you're going to
This
be
year.
sitting pretty large. This year? No, not 5 years from high school. Your high school reunion 5 years from now. 5 years from now.
15 years.
Yeah, you're going to be doing fantastic.
Okay, cool.
So I had a question about, what do you think is like going to be the current climate and everything with this new presidential administration coming in? Do you think there's going to be a lot of changes with student loans and stuff like that? Do you think it'll?
Well, the climate's going to get cooler. They're going to fix the climate.
Okay.
The climate's going to get cooler, right?
Right. With
The climate's not going to be warm.
yeah.
No, I know what you meant. I believe that they are going to tinker with the student loan repayment options through the federal program, right? I believe they probably will work to revamp the income-driven repayment plans. So they've already said that they'd like to combine the revised pay-as-you-earn and pay-as-you-earn into one plan of 15 years. And then it's been hinted at that at the end of that 15 years, whatever's left over is forgiven, but it's forgiven tax-free.
Gotcha.
Now, the challenge with this forgiven concept is it does nothing to rein in universities continuing to raise their tuition.
Mhm.
So if you've got a system where there's no incentive for people, well, there's limited incentive for people to make good choices up front, why not just take out the maximum amount of student loans? Why not take out the maximum, buy real estate in year one of dental school, just max out your student loans as much as you can, buy real estate, or invest in the stock market, or, sports gamble online, whatever you want to do with that extra money, right? And then you get on a low payment for 15 years, and then, a big chunk is forgiven at the end. There's no incentive. I haven't heard any incentives yet to kind of rein in the cost of tuition. And that needs to be discussed. I just I got requested to comment on an article on this topic on LinkedIn. Somebody at LinkedIn reached out to me. I guess they saw student loans in my title or whatever. And, if the schools have no incentive, I mean, what's the incentive for the schools to keep their rates, reasonable? The reason that college costs continue to go up is there's only so many seats available, let's say for dental school. And dental students have almost an unlimited amount of money when you look at what their parents can borrow, what student loans are available to them through the federal program, and what private lenders will give them. Okay, so let me ask you this: if you're a customer when you're a dentist, if you got family money bags, if you live in a community that's just a bunch of rich people and they'll pay for service, I mean, what's your fee going to be? Are you going to compete with the public health clinic downtown, or are you going to have much higher fees? I mean, the market is going to bear whatever, the university are charge whatever they can get away with when they've got a customer that's got unlimited access to capital.
Right.
I mean, it's so we'll see what happens. I would like to see them come up with some kind of a deal. It's the interest that kills you guys too, because not only, I mean, you might borrow $400,000 of student loans, but you got $100,000 of interest by the time you're done.
Exactly.
And so I'd like to see them, put in something like maybe a variable rate, cap it at maybe 4%, something reasonable. Okay, if they really want to get behind education, have a reasonable interest rate, but it's variable. So if the 10-year treasury is at 1% now, and dental students are graduating this year with 6.5% average interest rate, there's a huge disconnect there. How can the government say they're behind education when, they're charging 5 points on $400,000 or $500,000 of student loan debt, on the people that they say they're really trying to help?
Right.
So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I know it's definitely gonna be interesting. So one last question for you. I saw something recently, or maybe somebody told me something, that the loan forgiveness might be like a max of $10,000 per student. Have you heard or seen anything about that?
Yeah, everybody's seen the same thing. There's been discussions of, forgiving student loans. I think President Biden even said in one of his recent interviews that, $10,000 across the board would take care of. I mean, there's a lot of folks that have, $40,000, $50,000 or $12,000 in student loans. So yeah, I mean, if they gave, they forgave $10,000 of, a bunch of people, I'm sure that would be well received by those people, right?
Right.
I'd like them to knock $10,000 off my mortgage too. I mean, I've been paying taxes for about 40 years, so but we'll see what happens. What's kind of scary. I want you guys to do the best, and I'd like to see some lower interest rates, and I'd like to see some forgiveness. And everybody likes to get that sugar high up front with the if they make a $10,000 gift to everybody with student loans. But for you guys, that's not going to make much of an impact. But it's better than nothing, right? The challenge is that somebody's going to have to pay that back in the future, right? The American taxpayer. And guess who's going to be in the highest tax bracket someday? So them giving you $10,000 of student loan forgiveness, you're going to pay about $30,000 for that gift over time in higher taxes.
Yep, you're right.
That's my prediction.
Right. It's not free. Somebody's got to pay.
Yeah.
And just make
who's going to pay?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, who's going to pay? I mean,
Yeah.
we're borrowing the money from China, and we're going to have to pay it back. If you're in a higher tax bracket, so that's just math. That's just the way it works.
Gotcha. All right. Well, hey, Mark, thank you so much for talking to us. Thank you so much for answering all of our questions. I feel like we really we did full spectrum of everything about student loans. So could you give our listeners some of your contact information, email or website? And you say your LinkedIn, you're pretty active on that as well.
Yeah, so thank you so much, guys. I really enjoyed it. Our website is StudentLoansRx.com, StudentLoansRx.com, and then I'll give you my email address. Well, our email address is just StudentLoansRx@rbfadvisors.net. I know that's kind of complicated, but if you just go to StudentLoansRx, I just encourage your listeners, anybody that's got some questions on student loans, we offer a free 30-minute consultation. So you can just go to our website. Up in the top right-hand corner, it says free consult. You click on that. It takes you 2 minutes to fill out our needs assessment, just some basic information, and then we'll get a 30-minute consultation scheduled. Also, I love to buy pizza for dental professionals. So if any listeners want to invite me to do a lunch and learn, for their dental school or any ASDA conferences, I've been on 2 ASDA conferences in the last month, District 8 and District 6 just this past weekend. So we're looking to get in front of as many dental students and residents as we can and see if we can help them find that optimal repayment strategy. So put them on a good glide path towards their successful careers in dentistry.
Awesome. Love it.
Thank you, Mark. We appreciate all you do for us.
All right, guys. Take care. Thanks again.
Thank you.
All right, guys, that'll do it for our part 2 interview with Mark Johnson. He's the creator of StudentLoansRx. We loved having him on. He provided such a wealth of information. This is the type of high yield things that we want to provide for you guys because you guys deserve to hear it. No BS, everything that you need to be successful and be the top 1% dentist. So we hope you guys enjoyed it. We'd love to have Mark on again and discuss more about student loans, investment strategies, whatever it is that we can to get ahead in our careers. So as always, follow us on Instagram at dental.student.vibes. Give us a like, comment, review. Let us know what you guys think. We want to hear back from you guys, and we want to make this the best podcast we can for you. So as always, let's stay safe and vibe on.